19 COVID Stories. Shaking Hands. August 2020. On opening his front door, Murray Morgan was confronted by the large, portly shape of his neighbour, smiling broadly and pulling at the bottom of the tweed jacket that covered his brilliant white dish-dash.
"Good morning, Mr. Morgan. I wondered if you would like to shake my hand."
Murray, rather taken aback, managed only a rather garbled, I'm sorry? The bearded mouth let out a roar of laughter, and a plump brown hand was extended.
Come, Mr. Morgan, don't be shy. My name is Mr. Abdul-Rahman.
His initial confusion clearing, Murray was about to point out that the two men hardly knew each other, but that sounded priggish. So he chose a different, more polite diversion. Isn't that against the law these days? He wasn't actually sure if the government measures to combat the spread of the virus were actual laws or just recommendations. His neighbour dropped his hand, but continued to smile broadly.
But we shall not be breaking any law, Mr. Morgan. Allow me to explain.
Murray nodded, wondering if the encounter was about to follow any lines of rational conversation.
You are an old man.
The thick smiling lips gave the bluntness a generous charm.
I too am an old man, and we two old men have both been self-isolating, completely alone. Even our families must leave food in front of our houses.
This was definitely true in the case of Mr. Abdul-Rahman. From his window, Murray had witnessed the daily visits of the large Indian family to his neighbour's house on the opposite side of the quiet suburban street, encamped in the front garden, preparing and then passing a vast array of dishes through the front door. Someone in Sunnymede Road had telephoned the local police, who, after refusing an offer of tea from Mr. Abdul-Rahman, had broken up the familial gathering and extinguished the charcoal grill. Since then, only two young men left elegant covered dishes of cooked food each day at the front door. Confronted with his neighbour's civility and warmth, Murray now regretted his telephone call.
We have been each self-isolating for 2 weeks and are both still tip-top, symptom-free.
Satisfied that his explanation was complete, Mr. Abdul-Rahman signed off with the philosophical evergreen,
"No man is an island, Mr. Morgan."
"Excuse me, sir. Is this man bothering you?"
The policewoman standing in the street behind the closed front gate was short and stocky, her uniform neat, her blonde hair fastened tightly under her cap. The body language matched the voice, over-polite and aggressive. The voice of modern community policing. Behind her stood an older uniformed officer, his black vest tight over his paunch, an AKA submachine gun held diagonally in front of him. A curtain twitched in the front window of one of the houses opposite. This time, it wasn't Murray who had been on the telephone. In the face of his neighbour's apparent tongue-tied confusion, Mr. Abdul-Rahman sprang good-humouredly into action.
Not at all, not at all. We were just discussing the possibility of joint isolation.
The policewoman continued to hold her gaze on Murray, her colleague motionless behind her.
"I wasn't talking to you, sir. I was talking to the house owner."
Mr. Abdul-Rahman turned back to Murray, his raised eyebrows in a polite request for assistance.
He's not bothering me. No,
Murray's stammered attempt to alleviate the situation was stamped out immediately.
"You are both contravening social distancing regulations, sir. So I thought he might be bothering you."
Despite his disorientation, Murray was well aware that the accusation was a subtle, insidious offer of a get-out clause for himself. He rebuffed the offer and attempted to gain control of the situation by adopting a middle-class, reasonable tone. "Look, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding.
Sir, we are asking you to remain calm.
The burly officer still held the gun in front of him. I am calm. I only wanted to... The policewoman shouted over him for a second time, this time offering no get-out clause.
I repeat, sir, you are contravening social distancing regulations.
The armed officer added, almost as an aside,
We've already had complaints concerning this man's antisocial behaviour.
Abdul Rahman turned back to his neighbour, his smile now replaced by an expression of sad resignation. Murray was suddenly sickened by the whole scenario. The over-officious, obviously racist uniformed goons standing at his front garden, the twitching curtains across the road, his earlier betrayal. He heard himself shouting angrily suddenly,
This is Mr. Abdul Rahman, my neighbour. He has simply called round to shake my hand. What?
The armed officer was thrown off balance.
Shake your hand? What the fuck's going on here?
Their straightforward task now thrown into confusion, the policewoman stepped up her aggressive tone.
I'm telling you, sir, to move away.
Whilst his outburst had unnerved the police officers, it had emboldened Murray.
No, he's not moving away. He's staying right here and we are going to shake hands.
Murray's bravado immediately infected his neighbour, who broke out once again into a smile and reached with his hand up towards the inside pocket of his jacket.
And we shall observe all the correct procedures.
His hand extracted the string tie attached to a medical face mask tucked under his tweed jacket.
He's pulling a string! He's carrying!
Murray instinctively flinched away from the sudden, single, splintering explosion in the wood frame of the front door to the left of his head. A second explosion in the woodwork followed, this time stained with flecks of bright crimson. His ears ringing, he looked round at Abdul Rahman, now on his knees, clutching his chest, his eyes wide with terror, looking up at Murray, the magnified eyes of a drowning man looking up out of the water.
Trev, what the fuck have you done?
The policewoman was shaking the gate's swing door, her blind panic obstructing the simple task of lifting the metal latch. Murray took the hand extended up towards him and sank with his neighbour's body to the floor. A second ago there'd been no blood. Now it was everywhere. The policewoman crashed through the gate and came hurtling towards them. Abdul Rahman's dead eyes were staring blankly into nothing. Murray was slumped next to him, shaking out of control, the plump brown hand still held tightly in his own. His ears weren't ringing. It was the high whistling scream of the kettle he'd set on the stove before answering the door.